Many of you guys didn't expect that, so I'm so happy. So I wanted to talk about, and please forgive my thumbs, it's my first time having a panel, so gotta remember some things. Can you all close the door? So I'm here to talk about Bears. Bears is an original story of mine, and I wanted to talk about not only the story and the characters, but also how it's relevant to today's society and the emotional trauma of Black women, and just how that all is prevalent today, and how I think it's ignored in a fantasy and drama space. So. Uh, So just to frame this kind of conversation, what is trauma? What is emotional trauma? So it occurs after just a extremely kind of cataclysmic event in your life, whether it's physical or just something happened to you, somebody just it's by words or natural disasters, anything like that. It's something that happens to you that emotionally you just don't have the capacity to process that. And so, definition. Uh, it shows up in the Black community, it's very prevalent, and it shows up in mental illnesses, it shows up in how Black men and Black women communicate with each other, communicate with everybody in the outside world, and it's not understood where it comes from or why it's happening. And taking my time, guys.
You're doing great.
And I feel like in media, we've seen examples of Black women experiencing trauma, experiencing emotional trauma, but I've only ever seen it kind of in a drama space, which is fine. I think to show that is okay, but I think of course we need more visibility in that space where not just in the drama space, but I think hello. Good. Feel free to have a seat. Welcome. But I think to have it in a drama space is fine, because it's like the things that we go through are very serious, very potent, and I think any visibility is important to help everyone else understand what we go through. But I think the fantasy genre just doesn't explore that in Black women at all. In video games, in film, we don't see it in fantasy. And so, with all that being said, wanted to introduce you to the concept of my bearers. So, bearers.
I'm sorry, can you speak up just a little bit?
Sure, my apologies. My apologies. So, bearers, they're spiritual beings who escort the souls of those who died alone to the final resting place of their choosing. So, they have different types of people who they escort. Yes, so they have different types of people who they escort. For example, there are bearers who escort the souls of children. There are bearers who escort the souls of those who died unjustly. And yes, this is my very first panel, guys. This is very nerve-wracking.
We're all friendly faces. We got this.
I know, it's very high.
Right. You would think in a room that's $220 a night, they'd have the AC blowing really a lot.
Hi. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So yes, they escort different types of people, just to serve just a broad spectrum of folks. And the concept of them is that they're akin to reapers in that they are supposed to be totally unbiased in the decisions that the people who they're escorting choose when they choose their final resting place. So the options that they provide people are that they can choose to, when they die and are being escorted by a bear, they can choose to cross over into another life. They can cross over, be at rest. They can choose to go back as a spirit, watch over their loved ones. They can choose to haunt somebody. And they're supposed to be entirely unbiased. However, these bearers, they've died in very kind of traumatic ways, and that trauma lives with them. And how they come to be, they're kind of manifest of like just pure energy. So you kind of imagine energy in space, like whenever anybody gets angry that's around you, you feel it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so so when anybody gets angry in a room, you feel it as well. And just imagine that of a being that is just only energy. And so if they feel something, their experience of it is like tenfold, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've died with these kind of very traumatic emotions, these kind of feelings. And if they feel anything about the decision of the people who they're escorting, because like they could escort somebody who wants to be haunted, and maybe they don't actually agree with that, but there's something in them that causes them to, like their bearer instincts. They have bearer instincts that cause them to just exist, to just move, kind of like how a baby, naturally just starts to crawl on their own. It's the same for being a bearer, and they have their own instincts to just do and escort and just access those actions. So, but they're still souls. They're not entirely like just like ghosts in the ether that came from nothing. They came like they died. They were humans first, so they have these human emotions, these human experiences that they still have carried with them. Because there's just been no one around to, help deal with any of that kind of feeling, any of the experiences that they've had as bearers, or while they were alive, or just no one has been around to help process the events that have happened in their life and during their death. So they carry these emotions, and it affects the world, the space around them. So it affects the dead and also the living. So like if you've ever heard of just spiritual unrest in different areas, areas that are excessively haunted, I imagine that's what would be just bearers who've let souls kind of run rampant, or souls who have not had bearers as of yet. So and so they're collecting my thoughts. My train of thought goes places all the time.
A true artist's mind.
And so to tie all of that in, to just, I feel like that all the way that the bears kind of experience their the events that they are just kind of tasked to do as bearers, I think it reflects society today in how just how Black women kind of move through the world, how oppressive experiences, like on a day-to-day basis, like in the workplace, like for example, if you're in the workplace, just microaggressions, people who don't understand, kind of like basic things that any regular person would go through, but because you're a Black woman, it doesn't seem that way. So, like for example, if you're a Black woman and you're an introvert, and you're in the workplace, and you're just kind of quiet, it's seen as something different as someone else who is just quiet and requires their own office and workspace, And so that's just a Black woman existing, but someone's predisposed to think a certain way about you, and you have to deal with that, and then there's all this kind of emotion that you feel when things like that are inflicted upon you, for no fault of your own, just existing again.
Right. Exactly.
And so you kind of carry that when like things like that happen every day. Or, for example, not just like at work, if you're at home, and maybe your spouse doesn't understand you, or just your family, like if you live with your folks, and like because there's such a stigma around like mental illness still in the Black community, like you could be going through things and that your family doesn't understand or doesn't know how to like start the conversation.
Right.
You're expected to just kind of experience and move through those feelings on your own time, and there's no one to give you resources. Like if you experience depression, or anything like that, bipolar disorder, just any kind of mental experience that you don't even know what it is yet. You just kind of have these feelings, these emotions that are caused by events that have maybe happened to you in the past, and how can you talk about it? Who is there to talk about it with you when you don't know how to start the conversation around it? And so I wanted to write this story, and have these characters kind of be present in the Black community and exist in a space that can give a face and a voice to Black women and their experiences in a way that, just in another way that is digestible for not only the Black community but also just anybody, because they're human experiences, just reflected in a fantasy kind of genre space. And of course, like, who doesn't want to see like really powerful, spooky Black women in a fantasy space? Like, that's really cool to me. So,
yes.
I just kind of feel like I never see it. If we see Black characters, like, and also just Black women in fantasy spaces, you don't usually see there's no multifaceted kinds of, realms to what they're going through or their story or, anything like that. Which I think is unfair because, like, look at us here at this convention. We're all, like, just huge nerds.
Yes.
Like if you're not into fantasy, you're into sci-fi, you're into something here, so this is an example of a community that's underserved, I feel. So I definitely feel like my story, my characters is just a start to begin to have and prompt this conversation of mental illness, emotional kind of psychological trauma in Black women, just in the Black community, and to also make it palatable for other social groups, other races, other communities, because overall I feel like Black women are just in general still, not seen as human, to be quite frank. I feel like we're just dehumanized all the time, every day. You see, like if you're on Facebook and you see these posts of like Black women dying, Black trans women dying, Black girls missing all the time, and people go past it all the time, and just no one seems to care. And of course, we can't control how people feel about us. I don't think that's our responsibility. But I do think to have just more visibility is the most important thing that could be done if in a media space, to just have the presence, because the more we exist, the more we cannot be ignored, in the drama space, in the fantasy space, which overall is just kind of a mental thing, right? Like, the more you do something, the more you get used to it. You get used to anything. So the more you see us in any genre, the more people will be like, oh, okay, that's a black lady, it's a black woman, it's a black girl, okay, all right. And it can change the conversation in their minds, whatever their journey is. Not our problem, of course, but I think the bearers can help speak to that. So let's see if this is done loading so I can show you what they look like. Help.
Yay!
So the folder downloaded. Okay. Perfect. So we'll go here. It's just all. No, it's okay.
We're live. There we go. Oh, you was great. Thank you.
Whoever did that, bless you.
Blessings.
Okay. So I just want to introduce you guys to these characters that I have. So here, I'll walk in front of it. This is one of my bears. This would be my justice bear. She exists to escort the souls of those who died alone, unjustly. So, for example, you can imagine Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, people like them who died and who was there and who cared. She would care. She would be there to escort him to wherever he chose, his final resting place to be. This would be my kind of adventure bear. She escorts the souls of those who die alone on adventure. So if someone is just kind of a free kind of black person and just likes to explore and be adventurous and climb mountains and do all that kind of fun stuff, but they just are just a daredevil and like to go it alone for whatever reason, just like experiment and finding themselves and whatnot. Adventures. So say somebody is out alone on a mountain, like hiking or anything like that, she'll take you where you want to go. This right here is my mangled bear. So she escorts the souls of those who died in very kind of macabre ways. When I created her, I kind of was thinking about the young black boy who was he was murdered, and he was chopped up, and he, the gymnastics mat. I don't know if you all remember.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought about him when I was making her, and who would be there for him, who would, This is my mom bear. She escorts the souls of children who've died alone, and there's so many. So it's just, I imagine it be children ages 0 to maybe 21. This is my mental bearer. She escorts the souls of those who succumbed to their mental illness. And these are my war bearers. They escort the souls of those who died alone on the battlefield. So, and these women's deaths were pretty traumatic. So my mom bearer, I believe she has died in the process of childbirth. And she was a woman who, she didn't necessarily have a lot of kids in her life, like that she had herself, but she was surrounded by kids. And so that just kind of was like her whole life. That was the purpose of her life. And so that will bring me to just how bearers are manifest. So whatever the strongest purpose or focus of their life was what you manifest to be as a bearer. So if kids were the focus of her life, that's who she's going to escort. My mango bear, I imagine that she was a mortician in her life, and she performed autopsies on people, and so that's what she did, and that's what she will continue to do. My justice bear, I imagine she was a judge, of course, in her life, and she was a judge that could not be bought, she could not be swayed, bribed, anything, and she was murdered because she was that way. And so, as she died, that's how she will be in death. So yes, I just wanted to give a brief introduction to my bearers. Hopefully this was all interesting to you. And if you all have any questions for me at all, please feel free. Yes?
So it sounds like because I'm seeing a lot of comparison to like the standard like idea of like a Grim Reaper or the boatman on the river Styx, but the difference is where people who died didn't have healing in life, the bearers aid in healing in death, so they can get through the traumatic experience.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So, hi, I love you. Anyway, so get that out of the way. When you told me the story, kind of similar to what the question was just brought up. Like my thing about Oya as an Orisha. So in my religion, Yoruba Israel, like we have Orisha, those are the deities, the African goddesses and gods, and non-gender beings. And Oya is the one that guides us from death through the graveyard. So when I see your bears, I'm like, oh my God, like this is Oya, this is like Black religion. Did you have like spiritual, like what spiritual influences in your own life or whatever like helped you make this, or
I don't know about spiritual influences. Like it just, when I was making these, it just kind of was an idea that wouldn't leave me alone. So I guess in that in of itself is maybe a spiritual influence. In just further aesthetic, what inspired me was I care a lot about fashion. I care a lot about drama. I care a lot about avant-garde fashion. And if you've ever seen images of Alexander McQueen's.
Yes, I am.
Yes, Alexander McQueen. If you all have seen images of the people who attended his funeral, like I had never seen anything like that before. Like I just feel like, I mean, how else would it be for Alexander McQueen for everybody to be in avant-garde fashion, dressed in lines for death? Like, and that's that's super intriguing to me. Yeah. Yes.
So as far as the plot line goes for potential stories, would it be like almost like an anthology where each, I don't know if it'd be episodes or issue would be about like a different person who dies and then we introduce the bearers, or is it going to be continuous lines where we, I guess once people have moved on from their traumatic experience at the aid of the bearers, they would be at peace, but I'm assuming, would it be a continuation of conflicts the bearers have to deal with as well? Or would it be like each story's about a different bearer and a different person who died as well?
So, as it stands now, for just my brain, what's happening in it, I imagine that bears, they have customs, as a part of their instincts that they naturally have, but they just don't know about. For example, so when a bear dies and is manifest, they still have access to, their strong kind of human emotions, and that can be extremely volatile. But over time, slowly, it's as if that their human experience kind of numbs a little bit. So what they're left with is a baseline of how they generally would walk through life without like immediate access to like the lump in your throat of what is going on for you, which can still be, it's like the proclivities of someone, like why are you like this? Why are you passive aggressive? Why are you like
Yeah.
why are you talking to me this way? Like why do you like I'm here? Why are you talking to me like this?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. So just how they walk through the world is how they would be on a day-to-day as just a bear escorting different kinds of souls. And I imagine way more souls die alone than we would ever think to realize. And so I think they're super necessary. But yeah, I definitely have been thinking about just like making a series of just the day-to-day of how bearers interact with souls, and also how if sometimes their emotions peek through, how that affects not only the dead but also the living.
So being that the bearers have went through a traumatic experience, is there going to be like introductions of new bearers where they're learning to become them and they're learning to
Yes.
move past the traumatic experience and help others as well?
Yes. So, and it's interesting because it reflects the state of people, like how a bearer would help a new bearer to experience what being a bearer is and what it means, or if they even would.
Yeah.
So I imagine that the bearers, whoever is the closest one to the newest one being manifest, they're required to just go and meet them. But if they choose to not say anything, it's on them. People will do that. There are people out there who say you're about to step in poop, and someone sees you about to do it, but they won't say anything because they think that they need to exist to teach you a lesson not to step in poop. I imagine there could be some kind of bears like that. Yes.
Now that we're asking about the whole building,
Yes.
For the world that these bears live in, is there some kind of guiding influence? Like you think about this is the way the current world is kind of structured. We have these kind of systemic things that are supposed to keep people in check. So what happens when you have a rogue bear? Would a bear go rogue? What happens when you have a bear who doesn't want to do their duties? So I'm thinking about kind of like that, or are their instincts strong enough that they're guided only by that?
So the way I imagine the world is that the bear space is generally fairly lawless. Yes, they have their instincts, but people can go rogue. There are people, of course, maybe someone like the Justice Bear who cares a lot about just the order of things, who would just to, also, of course, not only escort souls, but if someone is actively and stop them. So it would be up to each individual bearer, how they feel, what they would bring to their role, to their purpose or position of being a bearer. Yes.
Follow-up question. And for the bears, so there's the Justice Bears. Are there other Justice Bears? I'm talking about this.
No. This is just one. I imagine that there would be bearers that would serve the same kind of purpose all over the world. So yes.
I don't know if this is a question or what is a question, but I really want to applaud you for your creativity and thinking about
Yeah.
this.
Thank you.
It's really amazing. So I hope that you continue to develop and explore. And one of the patterns that was kind of jumping out to me, just bringing it back to Black women and trauma, is that, you know, all of the bearers are Black women who've been through trauma. And so in real life, you know, so many Black women are traumatized, but we are also expected to guide those who are also traumatized. So we never get an opportunity to process and heal from our own trauma. And so if you have the opportunity to really explore that theme, I think that would be so bright for you to look at. And I imagine you thought of that yourself. And I also think that, you know, as this young woman mentioned before, there's so much like African-centered ideas that are to pick on these same types of topics and archetypes that I don't know. I'm like, was it organic for you, or was it intentional? How did that?
I would say it's organic. So my family, of course, we're, you know, all African American, but I myself don't have any like direct connection, you know, or just experience of African culture. And
It's just
so I know of like our history as African Americans in my family. Like, for example, we have I have family members who are Tuskegee Airmen, things like that in my family. But past slavery, I don't know, and I haven't actively like sought out, you know, where our origins are from or anything like that. So I guess organic.
it's really
Yes.
That's what she was saying, your development of your bearers is very good in how they're helping people who have died to cross over and find their own peace. But do bearers, even though their instinct is to downplay and to swallow their own pain again, even then, do they even have a chance to find peace as well?
So it's interesting you say that. I'm currently working on a story that explores one of the bearer customs. So the first ones, which were the first bearers to ever be manifest, so I imagine they, along with the rest of the world, they were manifest. They instilled a custom where every millennia or so, bearers get to choose whether they want to stay a bearer or not be a bearer anymore. And what comes along with the arrival of this custom is that their kind of emotional doors are unlocked, the floodgates are unlocked, so that they can experience all of what they have experienced as a bear. The memories are coming back from when they were alive, the experiences of their deaths, everything that has been just buried down and weighted by the purpose, the job of being a bearer, is now gone. And the idea that the first ones had was just to give them a kind of clear, a full view of what this is, what this means, so you can choose whether or not, you know, to either do something differently, because now you're not operating on autopilot, you know, with these kind of floodgates unlocked. So this custom allows them to choose whether or not they want to stay or go from being a bearer any longer. And you know, there's no judgment, there's no any type of feeling from anybody, of course. You know, aside from anybody who is close to anyone there, you know, just like people feeling any type of way about somebody graduating, you know. So yes. Yes.
Can you encounter more than one bear?
At a time.
Yeah, like let's say you died in war, and the way you died is being mangled. Will they both show up? Or
They can.
and what if you like you're not ready to go, like you mad? You like, I
wanna go.
Like, you mean if you're like a person who's just died but you don't want to go anywhere?
like the Justice Bear Company, I died unjustly, and I'm like, man, that's messed up. And she's like, well, it's time to go, bro. I'm like, right, so like, is she gonna like snatch me?
So that's the thing, right? So like when you first become a bearer, like I said, you have full access to your memories and your emotions. So they have their instincts, which are like super propelling you to act as a bearer. But that's like fighting super hard with whatever your feelings are towards your death, towards your life, all of that. And so that's like clashing, and that's a lot of emotional energy you're dealing with. Like imagine just having a panic attack all the time, just having ultimate anxiety, or just operating at that level. And so that does damage. It does physical damage to. I imagine the like forces of nature operate under just energy that circulates on its own on this earth. And so I think the emotional capacity the emotional capacity of bearers influences nature as well, because I imagine they all kind of exist. They manifest from the earth, just like the spiritual and emotional kind of energy of the planet. It all resonates together. So all of that energy tied in can like cause kind of, if it's like too much, it can cause damage to the environment, cause damage to the living, that kind of thing. So if, like, to answer your question, if they don't want to go, that depends on the type of person that they are. If they're a person who does stay calm under strain, or someone who shuts down, it depends on the bear, what it's. So if they don't want to go and they fight it, then it could be pretty dangerous. But no one has told you how to manage that, how to deal with that, and so you're just kind of just like exploding at everyone everywhere, around everything, and everyone just thinks you're crazy, or if you don't say anything, you're the strong black woman, and none of those are helpful, So anyway, does that answer your question?
So they got like the power on like a therapist, like calm you down and then let you make a clear decision?
Depends on if the therapist has died and if they're close.
No, because he's saying like, if, like you said, the soul, like the soul has options, like where they want to go. I guess he's asking about that. Like, the soul is like, I'm not ready to leave the earth yet. Can I stay? Can I stay amongst the people?
That's a good question. I never thought of them just going back to exist as a spirit among the people. I don't know why we did that, but
there you go. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just only thought of existing amongst your family.
Can I expand on that question a bit?
Yes.
Let's say, particularly with the justice fair, let's say somebody died unjustly.
Yes.
Because of a murderer or somebody killed them. Now, obviously, the bearer, by the way, I like the name because I just realized it's like pole bearers. They're carrying the person on the other side.
Yes.
If they help the person who just died through the traumatic experience, so it's like, obviously the person didn't want to die, but they helped them through. That's one hotline right there. Let's say, what if the person who killed them is about to kill someone else? Can the bearer have influence in the real world, or can the person who just died have influence in the real world to maybe stop that situation or get involved in that in some way, or influence others to get involved?
So if the soul who just died, can choose to haunt somebody. The bearer cannot do anything.
But maybe they can help them.
They're supposed to be unbiased, so of course they have feelings, but they can't act on them. If they're in their kind of within the millennia of time before their custom comes into play, they can't do anything. But they can empower people, or just not necessarily empower, but give someone the option to, do whatever they need to do.
Gotcha.
So I can take maybe 2 more questions, and then we got to close out. You had your hand first.
I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but I wonder what the world looks like.
So,
It sounds like they're on Earth, kind of coexisting with like people who are still alive, or are they on a different plane?
so I'm
Sorry.
4 minutes.
So I imagine that the Bears planet exists among the living, but it looks very different. So I imagine that whenever a bear manifests, it'll, you know, like say a bear was to show up in this room right now and they start walking forward, the room kind of would envelop itself and start to look very ancient, lots of foliage, lots of nature coming about to whatever their purpose kind of is. So for example, I imagine like the mom bear, it would be lush with baby's breath around, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it would bring us back to like ages of yore when these kind of bears like of that purpose first came about.
So when bear is in the presence with someone that is dying, the person who just died, their surroundings dissipate, and and the bear's world overlaps.
Yeah, so I mean, it I wouldn't say dissipate. So like these chairs would still be here; they would just get covered with foliage. Yeah.
And
Yes.
and is the soul, and is the soul like then? So is then the bear's world? What's the word I'm looking for? That plane between life and death, like what's that word?
Purgatory?
Purgatory. Is it almost like a purgatory, their world, where you're like making your way and then somewhere else?
I guess it could be. I guess it could be classified as a purgatory. I imagine that bears are like reaper adjacent. So you know. Yes.
Where we can find your stories.
You can find more about bears on my website, which is just my name.com. So jocelynshort.com, JOCELYN. I also have a table here in the Artist Alley with my business card and like prints of my bears if anybody is interested. And yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys so much.